Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair as the view screen flickered to life, the human vessel's silhouette blooming against the void like a predator uncoiling. Her bridge crew froze mid-motion, Engineer Kale's fingers hovering. Over the comms panel, Navigator Lyra's eyes widening behind her visor. The transmission they'd sent was routine, a diplomatic hail from the United Concordance offering alliance against the encroaching void swarm. But the humans' reply wasn't dialogue. It was a lance of raw energy, antimatter laced, streaking straight for their hull. "Evade!" Ilara barked, her voice cutting through the klaxons like a vibro knife. The ship lurched as Lyra slammed the thrusters, inertial dampeners whining in protest. The beam grazed their shields, a fleeting kiss of oblivion that lit the stars in electric blue. Alarms blared. Hull integrity at 87%, energy reserves dipping fast. Ilara's mind raced. These humans had ignored every protocol, every layer of translation matrix. No greeting, no terms, just that. Kyle spun in his seat, his scaled face paling under the red emergency lights. "Captain, it's not a weapon signature I recognize, it's contained, like they're testing us or warning." He patched in the scan data, holographic readouts swirling. The pulse carried no data burst, no code, just pure annihilating potential, bottled and flung like a message in a bottle from hell. Ilara leaned forward, her cautious nature warring with the fire in her gut. She'd led expeditions to a dozen fringe worlds, brokered peace with silicon-based nomads. But humans? They were the wild card, the species that had clawed from their cradle, whirled to the stars in mere centuries, building empires on grit and improvisation. The Concordance archives whispered of their history, wars that scarred planets, ingenuity that bent physics. And now this. "Hail them again," she ordered, steadying her breath. "Full spectrum. Make it clear we're not the enemy." Lyra's hands flew across her console, plotting a wide arc to keep distance, the ship's engines humming with strain. "They're powering up, Captain. Another launch imminent." The human ship hung there, a squat, brutal thing of alloy and purpose, no frills, no diplomatic arrays visible. It rotated slightly, aligning what looked like a crude accelerator tube toward them. The second pulse hit before Ilara could respond. This one punched through the outer shields, shearing off a sensor array in a spray of molten debris. The bridge shuddered, sparks dancing from a bulkhead. Kyle cursed in his native tongue, diving under his station to reroute power. "Shields at 40. If they fire a third, won't give them the chance." Ilara unstrapped, striding to the tactical display. Her crew was small, tight-knit. Kale, the tinkerer, always one step ahead of breakdowns. Lyra, the bold one, who'd once outrun a meteor storm on instinct alone. They trusted her to think 3 moves ahead. The void swarm was massing beyond the nebula, a hive mind plague devouring systems, and humans could be allies, or the spark that ignited galactic war. She tapped the comms override, her voice broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Captain Alara Voss of the Concordance vessel Harmony. Ceasefire. We seek parley, not conflict. The swarm threatens us all." Silence stretched, broken only by the hum of failing systems. Then a crackle, faint, garbled, like words filtered through static. Not answering transmissions. The voice was human, gravelly, edged with exhaustion. Another pulse built on their scopes, but this one veered, slamming into an asteroid cluster instead, vaporizing rock in a silent bloom. Ilara's pulse thrummed. They were listening. But why the antimatter? A demonstration? Desperation? Kyle emerged, wiping grease from his brow. Incoming data packet buried in the interference. Its coordinates, pointing to their outpost on Epsilon Drift. Lyra glanced back, her witty spark returning. A trap or an invitation? Either way, we're dancing on their terms. Ilara nodded, resolve hardening. Plot, intercept course. If humans speak in weapons, we'll learn their language. As the ship banked toward the drift, the weight of the unknown settled like dust on her shoulders. alliance or annihilation, and the swarm closing in behind. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair as the bridge lights flickered back to life, the emergency klaxons finally silencing after what felt like an eternity. The view screen showed the debris field where their relay station had been, now just an expanding cloud of twisted metal and ionized gas courtesy of the Krell probe that had sliced through it like a scalpel. Her crew, a tight-knit trio including herself, Engineer Tariq Hale and the ever-watchful sensor tech Lena Ruiz, exchanged glances that spoke volumes without words. They'd barely escaped in the shuttle, the Pioneer's auxiliary craft, but the main ship was light years away and comms were dead silent. "Status on the drive core?" Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She was the brave one, always had been, the type to charge into the unknown with a plan half-formed. Tariq, cautious to a fault, wiped sweat from his brow as he patched into the shuttle's diagnostics panel. "Containment holding, but we're running on fumes. That probe's EMP burst fried our primary transmitter. We can boost the secondary, but it'll take rerouting power from life support. Not ideal for a long haul." His fingers danced over the holographic interface, pulling up schematics that glowed faintly in the dim cabin. Lena, the witty observer with a sharp tongue honed from years of outsmarting simulations, leaned over his shoulder. "Boost it? With what, our good intentions? The Krell aren't the type to wait for a polite knock. Last transmission we caught was them demanding surrender, whole sectors ceding to their benevolent oversight. As if." She smirked, but her eyes betrayed the tension, flicking to the sensor readouts. Another blip appeared on the edge of their scan radius. Not debris, but something purposeful, closing fast. Ilara unstrapped and stood, pacing the narrow confines of the shuttle. The air recyclers hummed softly, a reminder of their fragility out here in the void. The Krell had come from the outer rim, their empire a sprawling web of enforced unity, probes like heralds announcing assimilation. Humanity's colonies had been chatting amiably via transmissions for cycles, diplomatic overtures, tech shares, until the probes started demanding more, then silence. No more human signals, just nothing. Until now, apparently, they'd decided to answer in a way the galaxy wouldn't ignore. "Options," Alara said, stopping to face them. "We can't outrun whatever's inbound, and hailing the Pioneer is a gamble. But if we don't, we're ghosts in the machine." Tariq hesitated, his cautious nature urging delay, but he nodded toward a sealed compartment at the rear. "There's the prototype. The Antimatter Initiator. Colonel Reyes slipped it aboard before we launched. Said it was for emergencies, if we can sync it to the transmitter." Lena whistled low. "Turn our SOS into a supernova? Bold. But if the Krell think we're done talking, let's give them something to chew on." The probe's signature sharpened on the screens, its sleek form, resolving into a dagger-shaped silhouette, weapons ports glowing with charged energy. Alara's mind raced. Ingenuity was humanity's edge, grit their fuel. They weren't conquerors, they were survivors, turning scraps into salvation. "Prep it," she ordered, strapping back in as the shuttle's thrusters fired in a desperate evasion burn. The deck vibrated underfoot, and in that moment, with the stars streaking by, Alara felt the weight of what came next. Not just survival, but a message that would echo across the stars. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair. As the bridge shuddered again, the low hum of the inertial dampeners straining against the barrage. "Status on the incoming salvo?" she barked, her voice cutting through the red-tinted alerts flashing across the consoles. Lieutenant Kai Ren, her tactical officer, didn't look up from his holographic display, fingers dancing over the interface. "3 more torpedoes locked on, ma'am. They're adaptive, shifting frequencies to dodge our point defenses, impact in 90 seconds. Alara's jaw tightened. The Krell Collective's ships loomed on the main view screen, a swarm of angular behemoths blotting out the stars of the neutral zone. What started as a routine diplomatic relay had escalated into this. Humans branded as aggressors after that first antimatter burst from the colony outpost. No one knew why the automated defenses had fired back like that, but the Krell weren't asking questions. They were answering with plasma lances. "Evasive pattern Delta 7. Ilara ordered, her mind racing through contingencies. The USS Vanguard was a scout cruiser, fast but lightly armed, built for exploration, not this kind of brawl. Her crew of 30 was competent, but against a flotilla, they needed a miracle or at least a clever dodge. The ship lurched as thrusters fired, weaving through the void. Kai's console beeped triumphantly. 2 torpedoes neutralized. The third? It's closing fast. Ensign Mira Solis at the engineering station spun in her chair. Captain, if we divert power to shields, we lose maneuverability. But without it, that warhead punches right through. Ilara met her gaze, seeing the flicker of doubt in the young engineer's eyes. Mira was the cautious one, always double-checking protocols, but her ingenuity had saved them from worse scrapes. Do it, full power to forward shields. Kai, target the lead ship's weapons array, buy us some breathing room. Aye, ma'am. Kai's fingers blurred, and the Vanguard's railgun spat kinetic rounds, silent streaks in the vacuum. A distant bloom of fire erupted on the Krell flagship, but it was superficial, like swatting a hornet. The torpedo hit then, a glancing blow that rattled the deck plates and sent sparks flying from a bulkhead. Alarms wailed. Hull breach in Section 4, Mira shouted. Sealing it now, losing atmo, but no casualties. Ilara unstrapped and stood, the weight of command settling heavier. Damage report? Minor, Kai replied, though his tone said otherwise. But they're flanking us. 2 destroyers breaking off to cut our retreat. She paced to the viewport, staring at the encroaching shadows. The Krell transmissions had been frantic at first. Demands for surrender, accusations of human treachery. Then silence, broken only by targeting locks. Whatever triggered the antimatter response on New Horizon must have painted humanity as the galaxy's new boogeyman. Ilara's own orders were clear. Evade, observe, report back to Fleet Command. But evasion was running out of fuel. Helm, plot a course for the Nebula Fringe, she decided. The Horsehead's glowing tendrils offered cover if they could reach it. Engage at flank speed. The ship groaned under acceleration, stars stretching into lines. Mira leaned forward. Captain, the nebula's interference could scramble their sensors, but it'll blind ours too. And those gas clouds, high radiation, could fry our comms array. Better fried than vaporized, Ilara shot back, forcing a grim smile. Kai nodded approval, his witty edge surfacing in the tension. Yeah, and if we play dead in there, maybe they'll think we pulled a kamikaze. Humans do love our dramatic exits. Laughter rippled briefly through the bridge, a spark of camaraderie cutting the fear. But as the nebula's eerie glow filled the viewscreen, Ilara wondered if this was adaptation or desperation. The Krell ships pursued, relentless, their hulls pulsing with exotic energy signatures. One wrong move and the Vanguard would join the list of unanswered transmissions. Deep in the nebula's heart, the first anomaly pinged on sensors. A faint artificial signal, echoing like a ghost from human space. Ilara's pulse quickened. Was it a relay, a trap, or the key to turning this nightmare around? Elena gripped the railing as the shuttle lurched, the artificial gravity flickering like a bad hologram. Alarms blared in the cramped cockpit, red lights painting Marcus's face in bloody streaks. Hold her steady, Hale, she barked, her voice cutting through the whine of failing engines. Below them, the asteroid field's jagged teeth loomed, a graveyard of shattered rocks where their decoy probe had just detonated. Too early, too bright. Marcus's fingers danced over the console, sweat beading on his brow. I'm trying, Captain. That antimatter burst fried our nav systems. We're drifting right into the thick of it. He shot her a wry grin, the kind that said he was already 3 steps ahead of disaster. Unless you want to play bumper cars with 1,000,000 tons of nickel iron. The alien scout ship hung in the distance, its sleek hull glinting under the distant sun, a predator toying with prey. It had pursued them since the transmission cutoff, probing Earth's silence with aggressive scans. Elena's team was the bait, a single shuttle loaded with false data to lure it away from the real weapon platforms orbiting Mars. But the probe's premature explosion had backfired, alerting the scout instead of distracting it. Options? Elena asked, eyes locked on the viewport. A chunk of asteroid tumbled toward them, slow but inexorable, its surface pocked with craters like ancient wounds. Marcus tapped a sequence, rerouting power from life support. The shuttle shuddered, thrusters firing in fits. We could vent the cargo bay, use the momentum to slingshot us out. Risky, though. Lose too much and we're floating coffins. He paused, glancing at the scanner. Or we hail them. Bluff our way out. Tell them we're just humble salvagers who hit a glitch. Elena shook her head, her jaw set. Bluffing had gotten them this far, but the stakes were climbing. One wrong word, and the scouts' beam weapons would vaporize them, tipping the aliens off to humanity's gambit. The real antimatter arrays, hidden in the belt's shadows, were humanity's ace, forged in secret labs from scavenged particle accelerators. No more diplomatic chatter, just cold, calculated retaliation. No hails, she decided. We're ghosts until we link up with the relay station. Punch it manual, evasive pattern delta. Marcus nodded, his wit fading into focus. He seized the yoke, muscles straining as he wrestled the controls. The shuttle banked hard, scraping past the asteroid with a metallic screech that vibrated through the hull. Sparks flew from a panel, and Elena smelled burning circuits, acrid like defeat. The scout ship accelerated, its engines a silent flare against the void. It fired a warning pulse, a lance of energy that grazed their shields, sending ripples across the viewport. Elena's heart pounded. That was no probe. It was a test, probing for weakness. Shields at 40%, Marcus reported, voice tight. If they hit us again, we're done. Captain, this decoy op's turning into a suicide run. She strapped in tighter, mind racing through contingencies. The plan had been clean. Draw the scout in, let the arrays handle the kill shot. But the probe's failure meant they were exposed. A lone spark in the dark. Earth's transmissions had gone silent weeks ago, replaced by these antimatter echoes, humanity's roar after years of ignored pleas for peace. Now with the alien fleet massing at the system's edge, every second counted. Keep us in the field, Elena said. Use the rocks for cover. We'll make them work for it. The shuttle dove into the debris cloud, asteroids clanging off the hull like hailstones. Marcus whooped as they threaded a narrow gap, but his laugh died quick. The scout matched their weave, closing the gap with predatory grace. A second pulse lanced out, this one direct. Impact rocked them, lights dimming to emergency red. Consoles sparked, and Elena tasted blood from a bitten lip. Status. Comms down, Marcus coughed, smoke curling from his station. But I've got a lock on the relay. 2 minutes if we don't get pulverized first. Elena unstrapped, grabbing a toolkit. No time for caution. She'd patched the engines herself. Her hands moved with the precision of drills run 1,000 times. Brave not in recklessness, but in the grit to fix what broke. The aliens thought humans fragile, their silent surrender. They were wrong. As the shuttle twisted through the storm of stone, the scout's shadow loomed larger, its weapons charging with a telltale hum that echoed in the scanners. Elna sealed a conduit, sparks dancing across her gloves. 1 minute to relay, one chance to turn the hunt around. But in the void's cold embrace, doubt flickered. What if the arrays missed? What if this was the spark that ignited the war humanity couldn't win? She shoved it down, focusing on the hum of repairing circuits. Survival first, triumph later if they earned it. Captain Alara Voss gripped the console as the Krell ship's hull shuddered, the antimatter pulse from the human vessel rippling through space like a predator's growl. Alarms blared in the dim bridge, red lights painting the faces of her crew in stark relief. Shields at 40%, Lieutenant Carr rasped, his tentacles coiling around the damage panel. That wasn't a transmission, it was a warning shot. Alara's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of intercepted signals. The humans had gone silent weeks ago, their diplomatic channels falling mute after the Coalition's ultimatum. Now this, a burst of exotic particles, antimatter-laced, slicing through their formation without warning. No declaration, no hails, just raw power that crippled their lead scout in seconds. She straightened, her scales itching under the uniform. Helm, evasive pattern delta. Get us behind the asteroid belt. Comms, hail them again. Make it clear we're not the enemy. The view screen flickered, showing the human ship, a sleek angular behemoth dubbed the Indomitable by Coalition Intel, hanging in the void like a coiled spring. No response came, only the faint hum of their engines building charge. Ensign Tira, the young analyst with her wide, unblinking eyes, leaned forward. Captain, the spectral analysis is back. That pulse carried data, encoded in the particle decay. It's a map. Coordinates to their home system, but laced with traps. Alara's claws tapped the armrest. A map? From a species that had ignored every peace overture? The Coalition had assumed the humans were isolationists, hoarding their tech after the Great Expansion. But this felt deliberate, a gauntlet thrown. Decode it. If it's a trap, we'll spring it on our terms. The ship lurched as another pulse grazed their flank, sparks flying from a bulkhead. Karg Kirsten Krell, his voice a guttural rumble. "They're toying with us, like hunters with prey." She shot him a look, sharp and steady. "Then we stop playing. Weapons target their drive section, non-lethal if possible. We need answers, not wreckage." The bridge tensed, fingers hovering over controls. Tira's console beeped urgently.
"Captain, the map."
"It's not just coordinates. It's a history. Their wars, their losses. They think we're the Vexari come back, the swarm that nearly wiped them out." The pieces clicked. The Vexari, ancient scourge of the galaxy, mindless devourers. The Coalition's probes must have mimicked their signatures during the initial surveys. Humans, scarred by that shadow, saw threats everywhere. Ilara's resolve hardened. "Open a wideband channel. This time no protocols. Speak their language, raw, honest." She stepped to the comm station, voice steady as the ship weaved through tumbling rocks. "Human vessel Indomitable. This is Captain Ilara Voss of the Coalition Exploratory Fleet. We are not Vexari. We seek alliance, not conquest. Your map shows your pain. Let us share the burden." Silence stretched, broken only by the groan of straining engines. Then a crackle. Human voices, fragmented but clear. "Coalition, prove it. Send your core signature." Ilara nodded to Tira, who transmitted the encrypted ident code, the Coalition's unbreakable seal. The human ship powered down its weapons array, a grudging pause. But as the asteroid belt loomed, sensors lit up. A Vexari remnant hive, dormant until now, stirring from the antimatter wake. Karg's eyes widened. "They've drawn them out." The humans knew. Ilara's heart pounded. The challenge wasn't just misunderstanding, it was survival, shared and immediate. "All hands battle stations. We're in this together now." The Indomitable surged forward, its next pulse not a threat but a beacon, guiding them into the fray. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the bridge lights flickering like dying stars as the Krell ship's hull groaned under another barrage. "Shields at 20%, she barked, her voice cutting through the alarms. The viewscreen showed the enemy cruiser looming closer, its plasma vents glowing with predatory hunger. Beside her, Engineer Thomas Ruiz wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over a jury-rigged console. "We're leaking atmosphere and engineering, Cap. One more hit and we're venting crew into the void." The human vessel, the UNS Vanguard, had been running for hours since the ambush in the outer rim. What started as a routine salvage op on an abandoned human outpost had turned into a firefight when the Krell, those tentacled opportunists from the Orion Arm, decided the derelict station's fusion cores were fair game. Ilara's crew of 30, a mix of veterans and fresh enlistees, had fought back with everything they had. Railguns chewing through armor, drones swarming like angry hornets. But the Krell ship outmassed them 3-1, and their adaptive shielding laughed off human kinetics. "Options?" Ilara asked, eyes locked on the tactical display. A red icon blinked. Incoming torpedoes, 3 of them weaving through the debris field. Thomas hesitated, then tapped a sequence that made the console hum. "We improvise. That antimatter pod we salvaged from the outpost, it's unstable. But if we rig it to the forward tubes," Lieutenant Kira Novak, the wiry navigator with a scar across her cheek from a pirate skirmish years back, spun in her seat. "You're talking suicide, Ruiz. One glitch and we vaporize ourselves before they do." Ilara's mind raced. The pod was a relic, a prototype warhead humans had abandoned after the Great Silence, when Earth went dark on galactic comms, ignoring hails from every species in the known galaxy. Rumors said humans had turned inward, fortifying against the stars, but here it was, humming in their hold, a fistful of annihilation waiting for a trigger. "Do it," she said finally, her tone steady despite the knot in her gut. "Better our choice than theirs." Thomas nodded, brave in his caution, and patched into engineering. Below decks, his team, gritty souls like young mechanic Lena who cracked jokes to keep morale up, scrambled to rewire the pod. Sparks flew in the dim light, tools clanging against bulkheads as they bypassed safeties. "Containment fields holding at 87%, Lena reported over comms, her voice laced with that trademark wit. "Feels like dancing with a black hole, but hey, beats paperwork." On the bridge, tension coiled tighter. The torpedoes closed in, their contrails painting fiery streaks across the void. Kira plotted an evasive roll, the Vanguard shuddering as thrusters fired. "Impact in 30 seconds. Ilara stood, planting her feet. All hands brace. Fire on my mark. The ship twisted, debris pinging off the hull like hail. One torpedo grazed them, shaking the deck and sending a shower of sparks from an overhead panel. Alarms wailed, but the shields held. Just. Thomas's voice crackled. Pod loaded, but Cap, the yield's unpredictable. Could take out half the sector. That's the point, Ilara replied, her fingers hovering over the firing key. The Krell cruiser filled the screen now, its boarding clamps extending like grasping claws. They wanted the outpost's tech, the secrets of why humans had stopped talking and started arming. Ilara wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Mark! The tubes roared, ejecting the pod in a blaze of exhaust. It streaked toward the enemy, a silver arrow against the black. The Krell ship reacted, point defense lasers lancing out. But the pod's erratic wobble, courtesy of Thomas's hasty mods, fooled their targeting. It burrowed into their hull, a perfect strike amidships. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the antimatter breached containment. A silent flash bloomed, swallowing the Krell cruiser in a sphere of raw energy. Hull plates peeled away like foil. Atmosphere igniting in ethereal blue. Secondary explosions rippled through their core, the ship fracturing into spinning wreckage. The Vanguard limped clear, emergency seals hissing as they patched the breaches. Ilara sank back into her chair, the bridge falling quiet save for the hum of failing systems. Damage report, she called, but her eyes stayed on the debris cloud, a graveyard of twisted metal. Kira exhaled, punching in a course for the nearest jump point. We bought time, but that pod's signature will light up every scanner from here to the core worlds. Krell allies won't forget this. Thomas emerged from the access hatch, face smudged with grease. Lingering radiation spiking our sensors. We'll need a full decon when we dock. Ilara nodded, the weight of it settling in. They'd survived, turned the tide with human grit. A clever hack born of desperation. But the cost lingered. One crewman lost in the hit, Lena's arm singed from a feedback surge. And now the galaxy knew. Humans weren't silent anymore. They answered with fire. As the stars blurred into hyperspace streaks, Ilara wondered if this was the spark that reignited the old wars, or just another scar in the void. Either way, the Vanguard pressed on, her crew bound tighter by the shared gamble. Captain Ilara gripped the console as the bridge shuddered, the antimatter bloom from the human ship still lighting up the view screen like a dying star. Status on the fleet? She barked, her voice cutting through the alarms. Lieutenant Core, scales paling under the red emergency lights, tapped furiously at his panel. 3 vessels crippled, ma'am. The Vanguard is venting atmosphere, evac pods launching. But the humans, they're not pursuing. That burst was precise, like they were warning us off. Ilara's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Galactic Concorde's envoy fleet had come to parley, not fight. For cycles, human transmissions had gone dark, their colonies silent after the Veil incident. Now this. A single human dreadnought emerging from slipspace, hailing with coordinates to a neutral asteroid, then unleashing hell when the lead ship hesitated. No demands, no ultimatums, just antimatter that erased a corvette in a flash of inverted reality. Helm, plot intercept on that dreadnought. We're not running. Ilara's resolve hardened. She was the cautious one, always calculating odds. But retreat now meant the Concorde fracturing. Her second Zara, the witty xenobiologist, shot her a look from the science station. You're joking. That thing's armor shrugged off our plasma lances like rain. We poke it again, we're the next statistic. Zara's tentacles waved emphatically, but her eyes sparkled with that irrepressible curiosity. She'd studied human archives obsessively, piecing together their ingenuity from old vids. Fragile bipeds building empires from scrap. The ship lurched as another tremor hit, residual grav waves from the blast rippling through the hull. Ilara steadied herself, recalling the mission brief. Humans had vanished behind their quarantine fields after some internal cataclysm, ignoring all hails. The Concorde assumed isolationism, sent diplomats. Instead, they got this monster, the Icarus, broadcasting a single looped message in broken Concord tongue. Boundary breached. Respond with force. They're testing us, Ilara muttered, staring at the dwindling signature on the long-range scan. The Icarus was pulling away, toward the asteroid belt where their supposed meet was set. A trap or an invitation to prove worth? Core cleared his throat. Incoming transmission, ma'am. From the Icarus. Audio only. Patch it through. Ilara straightened, her cautious nature warring with the need to lead. A human voice crackled over the speakers, gravelly and accented, laced with static. Concord vessel either. You've seen our welcome. Follow to coordinates or turn back. No third chance. Humanity stands alone, no more words, only actions. The line died. Zara leaned in, whispering, "That's not anger. That's exhaustion. Like they've been holding the line too long." Ilara nodded, decision crystallizing. "All ships reform on us. We go to the meet. Arm deflector fields, but hold fire unless fired upon." The bridge crew murmured assent, tension coiling like a spring, as the ether accelerated, weaving through debris from the lost corvette. A twisted husk tumbling end over end. Ilara felt the weight of it all. One wrong move and the fragile piece the Concord clung to would shatter. But humans didn't conquer through numbers. Their history screamed adaptation, turning weakness to weapon. If they could bridge this, maybe salvage something from the void. The asteroid loomed ahead, a jagged rock pocked with human-made craters glowing faintly from embedded reactors. Scans showed no weapon signatures, but Ilara knew better. Humans hid their teeth until the bite. Zara's console beeped. Life signs on the surface. Human definitely. And something else. Wait. Multiple signatures mixed. They're waiting. Ilara's hand hovered over the comm. Hail them. Tell them we're coming in peace but armed. The response was immediate. A docking beacon flickered to life, guiding them down. As the ether descended, thrusters scorching regolith, Ilara glimpsed figures in the landing bay. Suited humans, rifles slung low, flanked by what looked like automated sentries. No smiles, no waves. Just readiness. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and Ilara stepped out first, Zara and Kor at her flanks. A human male approached, helmet under arm, face scarred and weary under cropped hair. "Captain Voss," he said, extending a hand, formal, but his eyes scanned for threats. "You made it. Let's talk before the next wave hits." "Next wave?" Ilara echoed, shaking the calloused hand. Her mandibles twitched. Caution screamed to probe, but adventure pulled her forward. Voss's gaze hardened. The why of it all. "But first inside. The Xenoswarm scouts are inbound. Your rival group problem just became ours." Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair as the Krell ship's hull shuddered under another barrage. The view screen flickered, showing the debris field ahead, twisted remnants of what used to be a diplomatic convoy. Her crew, a tight-knit trio including the ever-cautious engineer Mira and the sharp-tongued navigator Jax, exchanged glances across the bridge. No one spoke. The hum of failing shields said enough. "Shields at 30%, Mira reported, her fingers flying over the console. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her voice stayed level. "A rock in the storm." Ilara nodded, eyes locked on the incoming signatures. The aliens, those sleek tentacled Krell, had pushed too far. First the ignored transmissions, then the antimatter volleys that lit up the void like vengeful stars. Humans didn't beg. They answered. Jax leaned forward, his wit cutting through the tension. "They're flanking us, Cap, like they think we're just another drone to swat." He punched in evasion coordinates, the ship lurching as thrusters fired. Ilara felt the G-forces press her back, a reminder of the stakes. One wrong move and the Odyssey became another statistic in this escalating WR. The challenge wasn't just the Krell armada. It was the failing antimatter core in their own engine room. Resource shortage hit hard after the last skirmish. Fuel cells depleted, forcing rationed bursts. Ilara had bet on a clever reroute through the asteroid belt, hoping to lose the pursuers in the chaos. But the plan backfired spectacularly. A stray Krell torpedo clipped a boulder, sending shards pummeling their hull. How sparks danced from overhead panels and the air recyclers wheezed. "Core integrity dropping," Mira said, urgency creeping in. She wiped her brow, revealing the grease smudges that marked her as the fixer, the one who jury-rigged miracles from scrap. Ilara unstrapped, standing tall despite the tilt. "Options?" Jack snorted, dodging another asteroid fragment. "We vent the auxiliary tanks, buy time. Or we go hot on the main drive, risk a meltdown but shake 'em off." His eyes met hers, challenging but loyal. They'd argued this before in quieter sims, but never with real fire at their backs. Ilara weighed it, the weight of her crew pressing on her. The Krell broadcast crackled over comms again, a garbled plea in broken human tongue. "Ceasefire. Negotiate." As if words could undo the silence humans had imposed after the first betrayals. No, this was earned grit, human style. Jax plot the hot burn. "Mira." Reinforce the core baffles. We adapt or we die. The ship groaned in response as they moved, a symphony of clangs and hisses. Ilara watched the view screen, the Krell ships closing like predators. One image burned in. A lone asteroid cracked open by their passing, spilling glittering regolith into the black. Fragile, yet unyielding. Mira's hands blurred at her station, splicing cables with practiced fury. Baffles holding for now. But if we push her, Cap, we're looking at cascade failure. The whole drive goes nova. Her caution shone through. Not as fear, but as the voice urging survival. Jax grinned fiercely, masking his own doubts. Then let's make it count. I've got a slingshot trajectory. Use their gravity well against them. The ship banked hard, engines roaring to life. Alarms blared, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Ilara braced as the antimatter ignited, a controlled fury propelling them forward. The Krell faltered, their formation breaking as the Odyssey surged through the belt's heart. Shrapnel pinged off the hull like frantic rain. Tension coiled in her gut. Would the core hold? One slip and they'd be the explosion that answered their own transmissions. They burst free, the stars wheeling into clarity. The lead Krell ship loomed, weapons hot, but Jax's path arced them behind it, close enough to feel the heat of its exhaust.
Now, Ilara barked.
Mira triggered the pulse. An improvised EMP burst from scavenged parts, frying the enemy's sensors. The Krell vessel listed, blind and vulnerable. Jax whooped, a rare crack in his sarcasm. Got him dancing. But victory tasted bittersweet. Scans showed their core at critical, venting plasma in faint trails. The Odyssey limped onward, the Armada regrouping behind. Ilara sank back into her chair, the cost lingering. A ship wounded, a crew tested, and the war far from over. Yet in that moment, amid the stars, human ingenuity burned brighter than any antimatter blaze. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the console as the bridge shuddered, the hum of the engines twisting into a growl that set her teeth on edge. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights painting the faces of her crew in bloody hues. "Status," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos like a laser. Engineer Kai Ramirez wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over the diagnostic panel. Antimatter containment's holding at 87%, but the incoming pulse is hammering our shields. It's not just a signal. It's a weaponized wave, modulated to disrupt our core. His cautious nature showed in the way he double-checked each readout, eyes narrowing behind his visor. Lieutenant Mira Chen, ever the witty one, snorted from her station at Tactical. "Great. So the galaxy's mystery neighbors decided politeness is overrated. Shall we send them a fruit basket of plasma bolts?" She patched in a counter-frequency, her hands steady despite the deck tilting beneath them. Ilara shot her a glare that could freeze helium. "Focus, Mira. We lost contact with the forward scouts an hour ago. This is their answer." The challenge had escalated from eerie silence to outright assault. An alien fleet cloaked in the nebula's haze, bombarding them with antimatter-laced transmissions. One hit wrong, and the stellar vanguard would unravel into a puff of exotic particles. The stakes gnawed at her. Her crew of 30, the fragile alliance with the coalition they'd been forging, all teetering on this knife's edge. The ship lurched again, gravity flickering as Kai muttered curses in Spanish. Plan B's failing. The dampeners can't filter it fast enough. Earlier, they jury-rigged a relay to bounce the signals back, hoping to overload the attacker's emitters. It had worked on simulations, bought them minutes. Now, it backfired. The feedback loop was amplifying the pulses, turning their own tech against them. Ilara's mind raced, drawing on the grit that had earned her command. Humans didn't fold. They adapted. Kai reroute auxiliary power to the forward arrays. Mira, sync the weapons to the transmission band. Make it resonate. She leaned forward, the scent of ozone sharp in her nostrils. The nebula outside swirled in the view screen, a canvas of violet storms hiding the enemy signatures. Kai hesitated, his brave streak warring with protocol. That could destabilize the warp coils. We might strand ourselves here. But he moved anyway, fingers dancing across the controls, sweat beading on his dark skin. Mira grinned, a flash of teeth in the dim light. Stranded beats vaporized, firing resonance pulse in 3, 2. The ship groaned as energy surged, the air thickening with static. Ilara felt the vibration in her bones, a deep thrum that promised either salvation or doom. The view screen flared. Enemy signatures blinked. 5, no, 7 vessels emerging from the gas clouds like shadows uncoiling. Their hulls gleamed with unfamiliar alloys, weapons ports glowing hot. The first pulse hit, a silent scream of antimatter that clawed at their shields, dropping integrity to 62%. Ilara's heart pounded. She could almost taste the risk, the cost of failure etching lines on her crew's faces. Resonance locked, Mira announced, her voice tight. The Vanguard's forward arrays lit up, channeling the incoming waves into a harmonic scream of their own. It wasn't destruction. It was clever redirection, human ingenuity twisting the alien's weapon into a mirror. The lead enemy ship bucked, its formation scattering as their own pulses rebounded, amplified. Alarm shifted tone from panic to tentative victory. Kai whooped, a rare crack in his reserve. Containment stable. Shields rebounding! But Ilara didn't relax. Scans showed damage. A hull breach in engineering, 2 crew injured, and the nebula's radiation seeping in faster now. Their adaptation had bought time, but the fleet regrouped, transmissions shifting to a new, probing frequency. The challenge lingered, a shadow promising more to come. She straightened, resolve hardening. Patch the breach. We're not done yet. Elena gripped the railing as the deck shuddered, the hum of the antimatter core vibrating through her boots like a distant earthquake. Sparks flew from a nearby console and she shouted over the din. Marcus, talk to me. What's the damage? Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing across a flickering holographic display. Containment fields holding at 60%, Captain, but that last volley from their cruisers cracked the outer hull. If we push the core any harder, we risk a cascade failure. Boom, no more ship, no more anything. His voice carried that wry edge, even now, as if joking about annihilation made it less real. Lila burst into the bridge, her lab coat singed at the edges, clutching a tablet that blinked red warnings. The aliens are adapting. Their shields are modulating frequencies to absorb our particle bursts. We've bought time, but they're closing in. 3 cruisers. Vectoring for a pincer maneuver. Her eyes, sharp behind smudged glasses, flicked to Elena. We can't keep answering with antimatter blasts blindly. It's like throwing punches in the dark. Elena nodded, her mind racing. The void outside pressed in, stars streaking past as their battered frigate, the Resolute, limped through the debris field of what used to be an alien outpost. It had started with ignored hails. Human colonies gone silent after the first extraterrestrial diplomatic fleet arrived, demanding tribute. Then the transmissions shifted. Not words, but raw antimatter signatures lancing out like warnings turned weapons. The aliens thought they could bully humanity into submission. They were wrong. Options, Elena said, straightening. The bridge lights flickered, casting long shadows that made Marcus's grin look feral. We improvise or we die. Marcus leaned back, cracking his knuckles. I've got a hack. Rig the auxiliary thrusters to vent plasma in a false signature. Make them think we're overloading the core. Draw them close, then hit them with a focused antimatter lance from the ventral array. It's risky. One miscalculation and we cook ourselves. Lila shook her head, cautious as ever. That array's misaligned from the earlier hit. We'd need to recalibrate under fire. And if they scan the vent, they'll know it's a feint. She paused, glancing at the viewport where the alien ships loomed, their sleek hulls glinting like predators in the black. But we could use the debris, magnetize fragments into a cloud, disrupt their sensors while we realign. Elena weighed it, the weight of the crew, 200 souls crammed into this tin can, pressing on her. The Resolute wasn't built for war. It was a survey vessel, retrofitted in desperation when the silence from Earth turned to screams. Now they were the last voice humanity had, and it roared with annihilation. Do it, she decided. Marcus, prime the vents. Lila, get that cloud spinning. I'll take the con. The ship groaned as Marcus initiated the sequence, alarms blaring in protest. Elena slid into the pilot's chair, her hands steady on the controls. Thrust reversed, the Resolute shuddered to a halt relative to the debris, engines whining. Outside, chunks of shattered station tumbled lazily. Twisted metal, frozen gases, remnants of the alien's hubris. Cloud deploying, Lila reported, her voice tight. Electromagnetic pulses rippled out, yanking debris into a swirling veil. The alien cruisers hesitated, their formation tightening as sensor ghosts danced across their feeds. They're biting, Marcus said, a spark of triumph in his tone. Coming in hot, 2 minutes to optimal range. Elena watched the scopes, heart pounding. The lead cruiser fired a probing beam, slicing through the edge of the cloud. It missed, but close enough to send vibrations rattling the hull. Hold steady. Almost there. Then it went wrong. A secondary alarm pierced the bridge. Hull breach in engineering. What the hell? Marcus snarled, pulling up diagnostics. Their beam clipped us. Pressure dropping fast, Lila's face paled. Containment's dipping, 55%. We can't fire the lance now. It'll tear us apart. Elena's jaw clenched. No time for doubt. Seal the breach. Marcus, reroute power from life support if you have to. We adapt or we join the silence. He nodded, already moving. Tools clanging as he patched lines. The ship bucked again, another near miss. Through the viewport, the aliens pressed closer, their weapons charging with a malevolent glow. Elena's fingers itched on the firing key, but she held back, buying seconds with sweat and steel. In that fragile moment, as the debris cloud thickened like a storm, Elena glimpsed the cost. A flickering light on the comms panel. A faint, human signal from a distant colony. They weren't alone, not yet. The core thrummed louder, a beast straining at its leash. Realignment complete, Lila breathed. Lance hot in 30. Make it count, Elena whispered to the stars. The aliens loomed, oblivious to the trap tightening around them. One clever twist and humanity's answer would echo forever. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair as the Aurora's bridge shuddered under another volley of plasma fire. Sparks danced from a ruptured console, and the acrid scent of burning circuits filled the air. Shields at 40%, Ensign Rao reported, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. They're closing fast, 3 minutes to boarding range. Ilara's jaw tightened. The Krell Armada had ambushed them in the nebula's fringes, their sleek cruisers slicing through the gas clouds like predators. What started as a routine scout mission to trace the human silence had devolved into this, a desperate evasion, humanity's last outpost ship painted with a target. She glanced at Dr. Lyra Kane, the xenolinguist strapped into the auxiliary station, her fingers flying over a holographic interface. Any luck cracking their latest burst? We need something, anything to turn this. Lyra shook her head, dark curls matted against her pale skin. It's not language. It's a weaponized signal. Overloading our receivers with phased harmonics. If we reply with standard protocols. She trailed off, eyes widening as another impact rocked the ship. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing across the bridge. Divert power from life support, Ilara ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Boost the forward arrays. Rao, plot an intercept course straight into their formation. The crew exchanged glances, but no one questioned it. Grit defined them now. After months of watching colonies go dark, transmissions met not with words but with antimatter blooms that lit up the void like vengeful stars. Rao's hands blurred over his controls. Aye, Captain. Engaging evasive pattern Delta. The Aurora lurched, inertial dampeners whining as she banked hard, ion thrusters flaring blue against the nebula's swirling purples. Ilara felt the pull in her gut, a reminder of the stakes. Fail here, and the Krell would push deeper into human space, unraveling the fragile alliance that had held since the first contact wars. In the engineering bay below, Chief Mechanic Thomas Hale wrestled with a flickering power conduit, his coveralls smeared with coolant. Come on, you bastard, he muttered, slamming a bypass relay into place. The ship groaned as energy surged forward, but a secondary explosion nearby threw him against the bulkhead. Pain lanced through his shoulder, but he pushed up, wiping blood from his lip. Thomas had seen too many friends vaporized by those antimatter responses, humans turning their own ingenuity against invaders who thought silence meant surrender. Bridge, Hale here. Array's hot, but if we fire that payload, we're blind for a full cycle. Ilara's response crackled over the comm. Do it. Target their lead cruiser, full spread. Thomas hesitated only a second, then initiated the sequence. Deep in the Aurora's core, antimatter vials decoupled from their magnetic cages, loading into the railguns with a hum that vibrated through the deck plates. On the view screen, the Krell formation loomed, their vessels' iridescent hulls weaving through asteroid debris. Lyra leaned forward, her cautious nature yielding to the moment's urgency. Captain, if this works, it might force a parley. Their signals show hesitation. They're probing, not committing fully. Or they're toying with us, Ilara replied, her brave resolve masking the doubt gnawing at her. She remembered the logs, humans ceasing replies, then striking back with weapons that turned ships to plasma ghosts. It was camaraderie forged in isolation, a gritty stand that echoed across the stars. Fire! The railgun spoke, lancing silent beams into the void. Antimatter rounds streaked out, blooming into miniature suns upon impact. The lead Krell cruiser shattered, debris spiraling into the nebula like shattered glass catching light. Cheers erupted on the bridge, short and fierce, but Alara's eyes narrowed. Two more cruisers veered in, undeterred, their weapons charging with an ominous glow. "They're adapting," Rao said, his wit surfacing in the tension. "Guess they didn't expect us to borrow their playbook." Lyra's console beeped, a breakthrough. Incoming transmission. Clear. They're demanding surrender or they'll glass the inner colonies. Alara stood, the ship steadying as it pulled away from the wreckage. The cost hung heavy. One engine damaged, crew down 2 from the initial hits. But they'd bought time, a clever twist on the human silent fury. "Respond with coordinates for neutral space. Tell them we talk terms or we answer like our kin did." As the message fired off, the nebula's tendrils seemed to close in, the adventure far from over. The Krell ships held position, their silence a mirror to humanity's own. But Alara knew the grit would carry them through. One bloom at a time, Captain Alara Voss gripped the railing of the bridge, her knuckles white against the humming metal. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, painting the console in red strobes that danced across her face like fleeting accusations. The antimatter cascade had breached the outer hull. Not a full detonation, but enough to tear a gash wide as a shuttle bay. "Seal it," she barked, her voice cutting through the din like a laser. Beside her, engineer Kai Tran was already a blur of motion, fingers flying over the emergency panels, rerouting power from non-essentials. Life support in the aft sections dimmed to a flicker by seconds, not minutes. The alien vessel loomed on the view screen, its crystalline hull fracturing under the retaliatory barrage from their forward cannons. Lyra Voss, no relation, just the cruel coincidence of names. The Krell ambassador floated in the observer's nook, her tendrils quivering. She'd been mid-plea when the first human transmission flipped from silence to annihilation. "We've answered enough words. Time for actions." Now her bioluminescent eyes dimmed, projecting holographic pleas that no one had time to decode. "This escalation, it devours us all," she transmitted, her voice a synthesized whisper over the comms. Kai slammed a fist on the override, sparks flying as the bulkhead groaned shut, containment holding barely. "But the cascade's unstable. If it chains, we're vapor." Alara nodded, her mind racing through the grit of it all. Humanity's long quiet wasn't surrender, but preparation. Decades of ignored hails building arsenals in the shadows, turning their isolation into a weapon sharper than any diplomacy. The Krell fleet had pushed too far, blockading Sol's edge, demanding tribute for protection. Now, the humans' answer was a storm of contained stars, antimatter blooms that ate through shields like acid through flesh. "Target their command node," Ilara ordered, swiveling to the tactical station where Lieutenant Rao hunched, sweat beading on his brow. He was the witty one, usually cracking jokes about alien anatomy, but now his quips died unspoken. His hands trembled slightly as he locked on, the reticle pulsing over the Krell ship's pulsing core. "Firing solution ready. Ma'am, this ends it. Their whole armada's reeling." The ship shuddered as the torpedo launched, a sleek dart carrying the heart of human ingenuity, a stabilized antimatter warhead, born from scavenged tech and sheer stubborn will. Lyra's tendrils lashed out, wrapping around Alara's arm in a desperate grip. "Stop. We can negotiate. Your silence hid this madness, but—" Alara shook her off gently, eyes never leaving the screen. "Negotiation requires equals. You came as conquerors." The torpedo struck true, a silent bloom of white-hot nothing erasing the command node in a ripple that propagated through the Krell formation. Shards of crystal debris spiraled into the void, catching the starlight like broken promises. But victory bit back. The cascade on their own hull destabilized further, a low whine building in the deck plates. Kai cursed, patching in auxiliary seals from the engine room. "We bought time, but the ship's bleeding atmosphere. Evac protocols?" Alara hesitated, glancing at the fleeing Krell remnants, their fleet scattering like startled fish. The cost was already tallied. 2 human outposts gone, crews vaporized in the initial clash, and now this, their flagship limping home with ghosts in the vents. "No evac. We finish what we started." Rao, second salvo on the stragglers. As the next volley lit the blackness, Lyra slumped, her lights fading to a mournful blue. Your ingenuity. It burns brighter than reason. Ilara felt the weight of it, the camaraderie forged in fire. Kai's steady hands, Rao's unyielding aim, but also the scar it left. Humanity's voice, once silent, now echoed in destruction, and as the alarms quieted to a tense hum, she wondered if the stars would ever hear them speak in peace again. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge consoles a distant roar against the pounding in her ears. The view screen flickered with the incoming fleet signatures, dozens of Krellian dreadnoughts, their hulls gleaming like obsidian thorns under the starfield's glare. Status on the antimatter arrays, she barked, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. Lieutenant Rao, her tactical officer, hunched over his panel, fingers flying across the holographic interface. Charges at 98%, Captain, but their point defense grid is adapting. Our last salvo barely scratched them. He glanced up, his dark eyes sharp with the caution that had kept him alive through 3 tours. We can't keep this up. One more push and we're venting atmosphere. Ilara nodded, her jaw set. She'd always been the brave one. The one who charged into the unknown while others hesitated. But bravery without brains was suicide, and she wasn't about to let her crew become another statistic in the Galactic Accord's endless ledger. The Krellians had pushed too far this time, blockading the outer colonies and ignoring every diplomatic hail. When the transmissions went unanswered, humanity's response had been swift. Antimatter torpedoes that turned their scouts to plasma. Now here they were, the full weight of their empire bearing down on the UNS Vanguard. Helm evasive pattern Delta 7, Ilara ordered. Ensign Kira Hale, the youngest on the bridge and the wittiest by far, flashed a grin that didn't reach her eyes. Aye, Captain. Let's see if these squids like a good dance. The ship lurched as thrusters fired, weaving through a hail of plasma bolts that lit the void like fireworks gone wrong. The first Krellian ship closed in, its weapons ports blooming with energy. Rao's console beeped urgently. Incoming broadside. Counter with the forward array. Ilara snapped. The Vanguard shuddered as antimatter bloomed from her bays, a silent flower of annihilation that engulfed the lead dreadnought. Debris bloomed outward, a glittering cloud that forced the enemy formation to scatter, but it wasn't enough. Alarms wailed as a glancing hit rocked the ship, sparks erupting from a bulkhead. Kira spun in her chair, her usual quips silenced by the red emergency lights. Shields at 40%. We're taking hits we shouldn't. She punched in corrections, her hand steady, but Ilara caught the tremor in her voice. The kid was holding it together, but the fear was there. Ilara unstrapped herself, standing tall amid the chaos. Rao, reroute power from life support to the arrays. We buy time or we buy the farm? Rao hesitated, his cautious nature warring with the order. Cutting life support meant minutes, not hours, before the air grew thin. Captain, that's... Do it, she said, meeting his gaze. He nodded, fingers moving with grim efficiency. The bridge air recyclers whirred down, a subtle shift that made Ilara's breath feel heavier. The Krellians regrouped, their transmissions flooding the comms, demands for surrender in that guttural echoing tongue. Ilara ignored them, her mind racing. The initial plan had been a surgical strike, hit their command ship, force a retreat. But the bastards had shields tuned to our frequencies, turning the trap on us. Now with the Vanguard limping, they needed something cleverer. Kira, what's the status on the auxiliary drive? Ilara asked, an idea sparking. The ensign checked her readouts, brow furrowing. Offline from the hit, but I can jury-rig it with the ventral thrusters. Why? Because we're going to slingshot around that gas giant, Ilara said, pointing to the tactical overlay where a swirling orange world loomed. Use its gravity to mask our signature, then come out firing from their blind side. Rao's eyes widened. That's suicide. The shear could tear us apart. Or it could win this, Ilara countered, her voice earnest, laced with the grit that had forged humanity's place among the stars. We're not here to play safe. We're here to end this. Kira's fingers danced across her console. Rerouting now. It'll be rough, Captain. Like riding a meteor through a blender. The ship groaned as they altered course, diving toward the giant's roiling atmosphere. Krellian fire chased them, one bolt shearing off a sensor array in a burst of molten metal. Ilara braced as turbulence hit, the deck vibrating like a drum. Through the view screen, the gas giant swelled, bands of storm clouds whipping past in a hypnotic blur. Hold her steady, Ilara urged, her crew a tight unit now, Rao's caution fueling precise calculations, Kira's wit masking the terror as she cooed to the helm like it was a stubborn pet. They skimmed the upper layers, gravity yanking at the hull, alarms screaming about structural integrity. Then emergence. The Vanguard burst free on the far side, engines flaring hot as they swung around. The Krellian fleet was there, backs turned, unaware. "All arrays, fire!" Alara commanded. Antimatter streaked out in a devastating arc, slamming into the heart of their formation. Ships erupted in chain reactions, the void lighting with the fury of a newborn sun. One dreadnought, the flagship, twisted under the barrage, its core breaching in a cataclysmic flash. But victory came at a cost. The Vanguard's hull screamed, a final hit from a dying enemy vessel crumpling the port side. Rao slumped over his console, blood trickling from a gash on the fleet's command nexus thrummed with the low hum of failing shields, the air thick with the acrid tang of overheating circuits. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather, as the view screen flickered with the incoming barrage. Antimatter blooms erupted across the void, each one a silent scream of annihilation that tore through the Krell Vanguard like paper. "Evasive pattern Delta," she barked, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. Beside her, Engineer Thomas Ruiz hunched over his console, fingers flying across the haptic interface, rerouting power from non-essentials to the forward emitters. The alien armada, those towering biomechanical behemoths from the outer rim, had pushed too far this time. What started as probing transmissions ignored by the silent human colonies had escalated into this. A full incursion, their demands for tribute met only with void. Until now, until the humans answered, not with words but with weapons forged from the stars themselves. Ruiz glanced up, his face illuminated by the red emergency glow. "Shields at 20%, Captain. That last volley clipped us good. If they breach the inner ring—" "They won't," Alara cut in, her eyes locked on the tactical overlay. The display showed the human counterstrike unfolding. Automated drones swarming from the asteroid belts, each laden with antimatter warheads synthesized in hidden forges. It wasn't brute force. It was precision, born of years scavenging the galaxy's debris for the rare particles, stabilizing them in magnetic bottles no other species had dared to perfect. The Krell ships twisted in futile evasion, their organic hulls regenerating too slowly against the pinpoint detonations that vaporized entire sections. A shudder ran through the bridge as another shockwave hit, the deck plating groaning under the strain. Lieutenant Kara Singh, ever the cautious one, leaned forward from her station. "Incoming hail from the lead Krell vessel. They're demanding parley. Say they'll withdraw if we cease fire." Her tone carried the weight of doubt, the kind that came from watching allies fall in previous skirmishes. Ilara's jaw tightened. Parley. As if the Krell hadn't glassed 3 outposts already, their transmissions turning to threats when humanity's silence held. "Patch it through," she said finally, rising to her feet. The view screen shifted, resolving into the grotesque visage of the Krell overlord, a mass of writhing tendrils framing multifaceted eyes that pulsed with bioluminescent fury. Its voice boomed through the translators, a guttural hiss laced with static. "Primitives of Sol, your weapons defy the accord. Yield the antimatter forges or we unmake your worlds." The bridge fell silent save for the persistent alarms. Thomas shot Alara a look, his witty edge surfacing in a grim half-smile. "Tell him we don't yield. We adapt." He tapped a sequence and a secondary feed appeared. Schematics of the Krell formation overlaid with human projections. The early plan, to lure them into the debris field, had backfired spectacularly when their sensors pierced the illusion, forcing this desperate stand. But adaptation was humanity's creed. Ruiz had jury-rigged the ship's engines mid-battle, siphoning exhaust to amplify the antimatter yield, turning their own velocity against the enemy. Alara stepped closer to the screen, her posture unyielding. "Overlord, your accord means nothing to those who burn our homes. We've stopped answering because words failed. Now we answer with this." She nodded to Thomas, who initiated the final sequence. From the human flanks, a cascade of warheads launched. Not wild, but choreographed, threading through the Krell lines like needles through fabric. The first impacts were surgical, severing command links, isolating the behemoths. The Overlord's eyes widened, tendrils flailing as its ship bucked. Chaos erupted on their feed, Krell vessels colliding in panic, their regenerative biotech overwhelmed by the unrelenting antimatter that ate through armor like acid through flesh. Ilara watched as the Overlord's transmission stuttered, its demands fracturing into pleas. Cease. We retreat. The forges are yours to guard. But she didn't signal the abort. Not yet, the stakes demanded finality. Too many ghosts haunted the comms logs. Voices from the silent stations that had bought this moment. Thomas's console beeped triumphantly, their core ships venting atmosphere. Fleet cohesion's broken, they're scattering. Kara exhaled, slumping back while Ilara allowed herself a single, deep breath. The view screen cleared as the Krell armada fractured, engines flaring in retreat toward the system's edge. But victory tasted bittersweet. Scans showed the cost. 3 human drones lost, their pilot's signals gone dark, and the forge arrays in the belt scarred, production halved for months. As the bridge light steadied to blue, Ilara turned to her crew. Secure the perimeter, and open a transmission to the colonies. Tell them we're still here. Thomas nodded, his fingers already dancing again while Kara monitored the fading signatures. The humans had answered all right, with ingenuity that turned desperation into dominance. But the galaxy wouldn't forget, and neither would they. The silence was broken, but the watch never ended.